Hi, I'm Meredith. This is Harrison, and we are P1 Picks, a Formula One podcast that uses data and analytics to give you the inside line on Formula One race bets. We have just come off a somewhat anticlimactic Piastri win at the end of the sprint. We are in Qatar, of course, and this has been our final sprint weekend. I do enjoy the sprint weekends. I know they're like not traditional, but what have you learned so far this week in Qatar, Harrison?
That the Haas finished within 10 seconds of the leaders and that Nico Hulkenberg beat Max Verstappen on pace. If that says anything to us, it's that we are hammering Nico in the top 10 today. I think I like this bet going into it. It looks like whatever upgrade that Haas has brought after America has really helped the team progress forward. It looks like last year that they were struggling a lot to bring upgrades, and maybe one of the reasons that they left Gunther behind was that the team rolled out an initial spec. And it's important to realize that the Haas isn't built by Haas. It's actually built by Dallara, right? And Dallara is the same group that makes the Formula 2 and the Formula 3 chassis. So they do a great job of getting a car that's efficient, generates a lot of downforce, doesn't have a lot of drag, but they struggle to produce the updates that keeps the car at the front, or at least keeps the car in the midfield going forward. That doesn't seem to be happening this year. It seems like they spent a long time trying to figure out their tire issues, so they're not necessarily having that problem where they're chewing through the tires like we saw last year. And I think Haas is one of the most competitive cars right now if you're looking for kind of that top 10 bet, right? If we look at Nico Hulkenberg finishing in the points, that's, minus 150. That was like plus 150 to start the weekend. So I think that's a really good place to put your money as we look to qualifying for, a team and a driver that are just in a really, really good place right now. Um, there's also going to be an argument here that Gasly and Alpine are going to be strong and potentially have a points paying opportunity. I think Gasly is doing really well in qualifying. He's finding the ability to get those tires in the right place. We know the Alpine engine maybe lacks some of that horsepower, but it is pretty interesting because over one lap, when that battery is fully charged, it doesn't necessarily seem to be as much of a detriment as it does in other courses. But if you saw last time, the engine did blow up in Gasly's Alpine. So want to be
Yeah.
a little bit careful when we call that out because Alpine have had reliability issues. But like as we said, as we look toward the end of the season without a lot of major upgrades, the Haas looks strong. The Alpine is there or thereabouts. Liam Lawson, was starting in the top 10 until he had some issues. So I think there's a lot that we can gain from that sprint race that we can kind of turn into solid bets for the Grand Prix tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good. It almost feels like I wish the season was just this was the starting point. Everyone is so close. I mean, Verstappen being as low as he was today off the start isn't even that surprising anymore. And I feel like if that would have happened last year, it would have been like chaos, disaster. And really, like you said with the Haas and the Alpine, I mean, that is if you had to bet on them ending their year this way, I don't think that you would have ever believed it just because that's not what the trends have shown. But like you said, it looks like they figured something out with their tires on the Haas side. And then Gasly has been qualifying really well, over the last few races, which is great. So jumping into our bets for this week, what's the first one we've got, Harrison?
I am telling people to hammer McLaren as the team of the winning driver. It's either going to be Piastri or Orlando. The reason why is that this track in Qatar does not necessarily have those stop and go long straights. And those heavy braking zones and kind of heavy acceleration is really where the Ferrari has been the strongest over the course of the year. If you look at tracks where there are a high number of medium speed corners, a high number of high speed corners. McLaren has always been the most efficient when it comes to having the most usable downforce on that vehicle. And let's look at what happened last year. Piastri won the sprint race last year, and McLaren was really the fastest car in Qatar. And I really think this was an opening, or this was some insight into what 2024 was going to look like, because for most of the year, McLaren was the fastest car. And really, over those tracks where we saw that, medium and high downforce was used, we knew that McLaren was going to be a step ahead. So, that information is still going to hold true, right? When we look at Qatar for this year and we look at the sprint race, generally McLaren is 2 to 3 tenths ahead of everybody else. And I think the only issue here is that you could potentially see, Lando give Piastri the win, Piastri give Lando the win. The team orders that are happening inside of McLaren is wanting to push me away from a straight Lando bet. But I
Mhm.
do think that McLaren is in a fight with Ferrari for the championship. They need to win this race. Um, they have the fastest car, and Max is not someone who's looking to potentially break race rules, get a lot of penalties by pushing Lando off the track. So, really, kind of the biggest impediment to McLaren's success over the year, Max pushing Lando off the track has a less percentage chance of happening. McLaren is going to win this. Ferrari doesn't have the downforce and Mercedes aren't there. So I love this. I think this should be a minus 500. I don't even think this is close. I love McLaren to win this race. That's a lock. The
Yeah, so
other thing, yep,
McLaren on this one is minus 230. If you bet
yep.
100, you're going to win $43.48. And I think you're absolutely right. The team orders was a little bit weird today in the sprint race, but so I feel you like not let's not put all of our money on just Lando or Piastri, but they've been it feels like miles ahead, definitely a few tenths ahead. And everything we've seen in Qatar so far. So McLaren, it's minus 230. Again, if you bet 100, you're going to win $43.48. What's next, Harrison?
I am loving Nico. I think Nico right now is driving at the top of his career. I think Haas is just, it's not necessarily one of the top four, right? They're not a McLaren, they're not a Red Bull, they're not a Mercedes. But when you really look at what car is fourth fastest right now, I think you can make the argument that that's the Haas, right? Magnussen was making up positions. Nico Hulkenberg was ahead of Max on merit and was within 10 seconds of the leaders over a 19-second race. That means he's losing a half a second to the McLarens. That is an amazing pace from the Haas. And I think some of the data has potentially been skewed because, before America, Haas did have a couple steps down. It doesn't necessarily seem like that package was working as well. They were kind of P11, P12, but it does seem like the updates that the team made to America have really allowed the car to have more usable downforce. And I'm going to say this probably for next weekend as well. They're in a tight fight for Alpine. There's a lot of motivation for Haas to do the right thing. They're not having the reliabilities that Alpine is seeing. Um, this is a team that's performing at the top of its place. This is a driver that's performing really well. Points finish, getting them in the top 10 at minus 150. I love it. There's a low percentage chance that this doesn't happen tomorrow.
Yeah, so Nico Hulkenberg minus 150. You bet 100, you win $66.67. And just as a reminder, we're coming to you in between the sprint race and qualifying. So this is get these bets in while you can. We're going to post this right after we are done recording. But I think those are two really strong bets. And like you said, it means a lot for Haas to finish in the points, especially with how close that battle for what fifth, I guess, fifth, sixth, seventh.
Yeah,
That
so they're fighting for sixth in the constructors with Alpine right now, and I know going into the sprint race in Qatar they were 1 point ahead, so it's going to be very close between these two teams for sixth place in the constructors.
Yeah, this has been an incredible season. This has been so much drama, so much like drama on the track. I feel like it has been super fun to watch, and really, we are going to need to keep an eye on those midfield teams as we finish the season. So let
Yeah,
me close this out here with what our bets are for the week. We've got Nico Hulkenberg minus 150. That is to have a points finish. You bet 100, you win 66. And we also have a McLaren team of the winning driver. That could be Lando or Piastri. And that's a minus 230. You bet 100, you win 43. And I think these are two really smart bets that we're going to have a good time watching for tomorrow.
yeah, and I love it because I think these last two races of the season, we know there's not going to be a lot of upgrades. We know the tracks are going to be pretty similar. We can look at last year's race, and we're racing in the desert, so there's not necessarily a ton of weather that can affect the circuit. These are great races to bet on because there's a lot more consistency and similarity week over week, and I think that presents a lot of value as we look to the end of the season.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Harrison. Make sure to follow along with us. We are P1 Picks and look forward to talking to you soon. The P1 Picks bets for the Qatar Grand Prix. We've got Nico Hulkenberg minus 150. That's for a points finished. If you bet 100, you're going to win $66. We also have McLaren. That's the team of the winning driver. That's minus 230. If you bet 100, you're going to win $43. Good luck, everyone.